Hello everyone. I welcome you all to the seventh session of our webinar series, Masters of Conversion. So before moving further with our session today, I want to address an urgent health situation prevailing in the world. The state of affairs has been really concerning, and our wishes go out to everyone who is facing the brunt. So stay safe everyone, wash your hands regularly, and cooperate with the international and local healthcare institutions around you. And yes, since we all are working from home, please excuse us for any noises that you hear in the background, right? So yeah, with that, let's introduce myself first. My name is Vipul, and I am the marketing manager at VWO, a full funnel experience optimization platform. Master for tonight is VWO's in-house growth master, as we call him, Ashwin Gupta. Thanks for sharing your learning with our audience today, Ashwin.
Excited to be here.
Perfect. So before I pass on this mic to Ashwin, I just want to inform everyone that we have reserved 10 minutes at the end of this session for a live question and answer section. So send in your questions whenever you have one using the questions panel, and we'll take them in the end. With that, Ashwin, the stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Vipul. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this session of Masters of Conversion. I'll try to keep it as real as possible in this session and take you through the journey of the last 18 months that we have had, in my transition from product to growth, and how we actually specifically handled revenue churn different in the past 18 months. That led to about 35% improvement in our retention and 35% reduction in the churn numbers that we saw at VW. So I'll start off, just one second. Yeah. So let's start off by understanding, why churn is so tough. So churn is tough because, the different reasons to which, why customers leave or stop, interacting with your product. In our case, these are the few problems that came up again and again. So a lot of the customers, we think that they may end up going to the competitors, but one of the top reasons why the customers left us was also because, they lost interest in solving the problem itself, the problem of experimentation. Experimentation is a tough problem to solve, and if you're not doing it on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't really impact your numbers. They stay exactly with the way they are 15 days ago to what they are right now. And if you're not doing it profusely, it's very hard to actually see the value of experimentation. So if you're not doing it, it's easy to forget about, what VW is, why you bought it in the first place. And that happened with a lot of our customers. If they were not activated in the first few months, they lost interest and they did not come back and, use the platform. Maybe, and the second one, maybe they, did not have a great experience. Maybe a support ticket was not solved the way they were expecting it to be solved. Maybe the experience within the product was not up to the mark. Maybe a feature that was something that was important for the use case that they hired VW for was not taken care of. So this also happens a lot, and that's something that, we wanted to fix on a case-by-case basis. And then there are other reasons as well. But one of the top reasons, again, that came across very strongly were lack of resources to actually get the job done. Because, experimentation is becoming more and more complex, the kind of tests that people are running, and requires cross-functional effort. You need engineering, you need growth, you need marketing, different teams to kind of come together and work on an experimentation program. And a lot of people were not able to really get that going internally. And that played that itself played an important role in them churning away from VW. So these reasons could differ from, one product to another, but these are the reasons that we saw our clients leaving VW for. So these 3 points are in hindsight. So the 3 things that you could solve to actually have an impact on retention and reducing revenue churn is engagement, activation, and resurrection. So I've actually started off with engagement because that had the most impact in the way we did things. Activation was the second biggest one, and resurrection also had an impact, but I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. So when we say engagement, you need to look at the entire customer life cycle. So, once a customer comes in, you need to activate them as quickly as possible. In our case, we saw that customers who activated, who ran at least 3 or 4 tests in the first 45 days of their VW journey, they had a much higher chance of continuing running tests over their entire life cycle. And it was in stark contrast with people who ran less than 3 tests in the first 45 days, and we saw their engagement with the platform declining by after the first quarter or the fourth month. So what's important is to get the engagement and the activation rates right for your product. And then if you go into resurrection is around improving payment methods. So, like the credit card optimization, running campaigns on people who have not paid for your product on time, and running campaigns there. So we saw that the combination of these three actually give you a very holistic view on how to handle churn and increase retention for your product. So for engagement, one of the biggest problems that we had was, we have about 6,000 plus accounts sitting in our database, and we did not know, whom we should kind of focus on when it came to lack of engagement. So what was happening was, when someone was completely out of the loop, when they stopped using the product for a while, or they were not logging in, that's the time that we started, giving any kind of attention to them. But in most of the cases, it was too late. So one of the things that we recognized very early in the game was to have some sort of an engagement metric that gives us an insight into what a customer is doing on your platform and if they're actually deriving value out of the platform or not. So how we kind of build this engagement metric was, first of all, we wanted to keep it very simple because we wanted the customer facing teams to actually use this metric, understand this metric on a day-to-day basis, and actually and actually comprehend it so that they can be more close to the action plan that we want them to do. So the way we came up with the engagement metric was to focus on the key activity that we expect a customer to do on our platform. This key activity in our case is testing. So if someone is actually making a test live and a significant number of tests live, that's when we know that they're actually deriving value of the platform from the platform. So it's important when you're looking at an engagement metric, even if you want to keep it as simple as possible, just so that you can start getting insights into what's going on, always look at what is the key feature of your product that actually gets your users 10x the value of what they have paid for your platform. So in our case, that testing obviously has been the centerpiece. So we thought, like having some sort of metric that captures this key metric is important. So what we looked at was, the number of tests that they're running and time since the last test they have run, along with the login information that we had around the customer. And we combined these metrics along with the usage of the plan. Obviously, we also looked at the usage of the plan itself and combined these different factors into a single engagement metric where we are able to create different buckets from an engagement standpoint. So these buckets were high, medium, low, critical, disengaged. We had a wider spread of buckets, but you can keep it as simple as high, medium, low, or great usage, good usage, and bad usage, whatever you think is right for your product. The second layer that we did was we segmented this information again on the basis of the type of customers we had. So enterprise customers, mid-market customers, and SMB customers, and also it gave us kind of an idea about the kind of customers that how they differentiate, how their behavior, how their engagement differentiates at different stages, and then what are the numbers for each of the buckets, so that the right kind of teams can actually start creating an action plan around these buckets, around these segments. So the other thing that we did, or this actually happened naturally, we started off by kind of working with the customer success teams, but later on, as we kind of unrolled our plan to reduce churn, we saw that we had to align multiple teams together. So you need marketing to run the campaigns. very specific campaigns for these three different buckets, and then within these these three segments, customer segments, and the buckets, different engagement buckets we have. So marketing needs to play a very important role in really getting the messaging right, and creating campaigns so that we can touch as many accounts as possible and bring them back into the platform and starting and have them start engaging with VWO. We also saw that product and services and support teams also had to become part of the action plan that I'll discuss a bit later in the presentation. So before I move further, when we decided on working the key metric, that's where we made our first mistake. We actually spent about 6 weeks to 7 weeks working on a metric that was completely derived by our data science team. And we saw that we were too focused on getting it perfect, because when you look at data science, you look at different correlations, you look at you look at some sort of a tree structure so that you can figure out which factors we need to prioritize and which factors we should not. And it just became a laborious exercise that took a lot of time, that was not really optimized for actually being applied to the business. It became an academic exercise, and that's where we kind of spent a lot of time that we could have saved, where data science team could have worked on something different, and we would not have waited on a metric that may not have been that useful at that point of time. So I think the previous slide where I talked about the engagement metric, that came out after simplifying the process of understanding a customer and really sitting down with the right stakeholders within product, within customer success, and understanding what are the features, or what is the feature that gives us an insight into what a customer is doing, and obviously the behavior of the customer itself. And we were able to lock it down to the number of tests they run, the login information that we have around them, and then the quota usage overall that gives us an insight into what's going on. And we played it out with a few numbers just to see the kind of accounts it kept on throwing at us, and reviewing those accounts manually. Now it doesn't sound fancy, but based on a couple of rounds of experimentation and playing around with the weights, we saw that it started turning out accounts that we're not really focusing on right now. And that's when we knew that we have a pretty exciting engagement metric in place that we logged down and send that information within Salesforce so that the teams can start building action plans using this engagement metric. So another thing, what happened after this was, once we had these accounts, we obviously have a dedicated customer success team for specific accounts. And one thing we realized was, based on the engagement that we had within these buckets, what are the accounts where we actually have some sort of a touch point where we're actually talking to them? So maybe it could be support, it could be success, it could even be product. Is there a communication channel that is open within these accounts or not? And our game plan was the buckets that I talked about, the critical, disengaged, and the low buckets that we had. We figured out a 60-day plan where we, use these touch points to really understand and figure out why they were not using the platform. And the three major buckets that we saw was education, implementation, and actually resources that they required to actually implement the tests, some of the complex tests that they wanted to implement. So then what we were able to do was, because we took the mandate of support team and the services teams to help us out, we were able to create specific plans for each of these solutioning that we thought was reasonable for our customers. So in education, we started off by support team giving one-on-one sessions to our customers, but later on they started building training videos prioritizing the videos that came out of these sessions. Implementation teams were able to kind of help customers configure VWO dashboard for their business. And again, we started doing that directly after obviously getting the consent from the users, directly into their accounts so that they can get value out of VWO as quickly as possible. So at the end, what we tried to do, at least in that moment, was to do whatever it takes to make them successful at that point of time. We did not try to think about it from the perspective of scaling the program. We did not think about it from the perspective of figuring out how many resources we would require to actually solve this. What we wanted to look at was exactly where are the customers are getting stuck, and we could only recognize that when we actually got our hands dirty with them on the problems that they were facing. So if we, this graph kind of also gives you an idea, and actually this is a very important graph again in hindsight that I think is incredibly important for your business to follow. You may have an account which is high value, and it's deriving also, like deriving a lot of value out of the platform, and you also have a very decent relationship with. But they could also be accounts where who are really driving value out of your product, but you do not have a great relationship with. What we started doing was, we started our reduction of churn journey by looking at the bottom half of the square. We looked at the accounts where they did not use the platform much and they were looking to cancel, and then we looked at the accounts where they did not derive value out of the platform, but we had a touch point, and we started talking to them. And this had some shortcomings. Where we failed was the accounts where people were using VWO very aggressively, but we did not really have a touch point to understand why, what is the reason that they're using VWO a lot better than others. What are the goals that they're chasing, or what kind of processes they have, or how they have structured their teams, which is making them attack the problem very, very differently than a big chunk of our accounts. And do we have a connection on these accounts where we can understand the graduation in use cases that happens as they move along or as they move further in the life cycle? We kind of ignored the accounts that are high usage because we thought they're already in a good state, but we also saw a decent chunk of accounts moving away from VWO because their use cases that graduated that we did not cater to at that point of time. And those use cases are the ones that we have built products for this year. So where we failed were, not working on dedicated campaigns, or not having dedicated campaigns for the accounts that were doing really well, and where we did not have a connect. We did not really, do any kind of campaigns to re-engage with them. And we also lost some of the accounts because, probably they were not aware of certain features that we had that met their requirement, or they had use cases that were not taken care of by the platform at that point of time. We could have responded a lot better by having like our product team interact with these customers, expose our product roadmap to them, and really show that what we are building right now and what we could have built in the future that could have met those use cases. But because we did not have a connect, we lost some of our best performing accounts because of that. So if I go back to just one second, if I go back to this graph, we did focus on this aspect a lot, but we kind of did not figure out on how to leverage this and kind of maintain this relationship with certain accounts that matter to us. But where we succeeded, because we had a decent chunk of accounts that were not doing a lot of testing, once we started focusing on them, mapping out the right stakeholders within those organizations, helping them with the right kind of trainings, and really customizing our solution to the kind of problems that they were facing, we were able to get a 50% drop on the revenue churn that we had from our enterprise customers. The second biggest learning that we had was, and that's something that I touched upon with the engagement metric as well, that churn usually happens in the first 60 days of the life cycle and not the last 60 days. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of marketers or product or growth people do is that they start focusing on the last 60 days and doing whatever it takes to retain the customer once the renewal is coming in. But I think, and this is a great segue to the next section or the next part of the strategy that worked really well for us, was activation. If you're not able to show the value of your product when your customers are really excited about solving the problem, it leads to issues going forward. And as you delay the action plan, you're leaving it up to chance for a customer to renew with you or not. So that was one of our biggest learnings that we had from this entire program. So the way we wanted to handle this was by introducing customer success for every customer we had, that we had in our system. And this was a big ask that we had from ourselves. But the way we started off the program was to start off by having a team of success managers who were focusing on activating the customers in the right manner in the first 60 days for all the new accounts that were coming in and who did not have a wide glove treatment from our enterprise success managers. The whole idea of this team was to understand the business use case of the customer, really understand why they decided to go for experimentation, what kind of challenges or what kind of goals that they wanted to achieve by using VWO, and really get them started on the three aspects that we figured out based on our conversations with the enterprise customers, which was education, training them as quickly as possible, implementation, getting their VWO dashboards configured for their business. That means creating the views that reflect the segments of these businesses, having funnels that reflect the journey of the customer on their products, and having all the hypotheses being created, the ideas that they had in their mind, having implementation in place so that they can actually implement those campaigns as quickly as possible. So once we started doing that, we had some incredible results in the improvement of our activation rate. But the other question that we had was, how do we scale this program? How do we kind of, from a cost standpoint as well, keep it on the low and optimize it so that we are able to have coverage, but we are not ballooning our costs through the roof? So the way we looked at it was a feedback loop. And when I say a feedback loop, this is an internal feedback loop where the learnings that these activation managers or customer success managers had in the first 60 days, those learnings were captured and shared cross-functionally across teams to act upon as quickly as possible. So, once we realized the issues that these customers were facing, what marketing and product teams did were, automate the messaging and the usage aspect, within the product as quickly as possible. So then we started building features. We started improving our flows and making changes to our product that reflect the kind of feedback that we're receiving through these activation managers. And that's the feedback that we want to optimize for even going further. So if you're looking at your business, it's important to have a feedback loop where your marketing and product teams are consistently getting insights from your customer success managers or managers who are interacting with the customers on a day-to-day basis, and figuring out a way to implement certain learnings as quickly as possible so that you can automate a part of their work that they're spending time on right now, and they can focus on the strategic aspect, and you can, for the next chunk of customers that are coming in or the new customers that come into the system, they do not face the same problems that the other customer faced. So as I discussed in the last slide, the role of product and marketing, at least on the customer lifecycle aspect, then becomes to automate as many learnings as possible. And the second aspect that we found was very important was as quickly as possible. So if we have, let's say, 5 learnings this month, and your product team is taking 6 to 8 months to implement that, that there a significant chunk, or there's a percentage of your customers that are going through those pain points on a day-to-day basis, and that is something that should be unacceptable for a company that wants to be highly customer focused. So having these teams work together, success, marketing, product, support, and really work on fixing these problems from each of the facets becomes really important. And as I discussed, because of this exercise, we were able to improve our activation rates by 2x. And the way we came about with the definition of activation rate is kind of tied to the engagement metric that we had. So when we were doing our when we were figuring out the engagement metric, we did realize, as I discussed before, that certain number of tests need to be run in the first 45 days, in the first 60 days, for a customer to be really successful, and we could correlate their success on the correlate that to their success on the platform, and that's what became the target of these success managers who are focusing on activation, and then having the teams automate as many parts of it as possible. The third part to this is the resurrection. So resurrection is something that you can do straight away. It's the one that gives you the most immediate results. So what we did was, we have our payment gateway uh, provider that we worked with, and what we were able to do was, upgrade cards that were expiring, within 6 months, and they were able to do that with their certain campaigns that they had internally, and that was able to give us an 8% improve on our automatic renewal revenue that was coming in. And we also got 9% improvement by running campaigns on unfinished payments, which gave us a decent overall revenue uplift. But the problem with the resurrection campaigns that we had were, these are one-time campaigns that you run and you get an uptick, and then it kind of is, it's hard to replicate that again. It kind of bakes into the system, and it's a flat line. You're not able to kind of compound your retention rates by using this method. But it's important, especially when you're championing the cause of retention internally, to show initial results. This is the starting point. Getting the resurrection campaigns in place, making sure the cards that are expiring, they do not expire. You have optimized campaigns running for unfinished payments, and that at least makes sure you're not losing revenue on points where you could have saved by running simple campaigns. Overall, retention is a much longer game than doing new sales in the B2B space. Retention strategies hard, if you do it in the short term, you'll hardly be able to generate any kind of results. So I think it's important internally, when you are working with your CEO or your C-level executives, you need to get that expectation right, that increasing activation and engagement, that have the biggest those are the biggest growth levers to actually increase retention. It takes time, because you do not know where you need to start attacking the problem from, and you need time to figure that out, and you need to work cross-functionally to really get that plan right. But in the short term, to get things going, resurrection strategies work really well, but you should negotiate internally on how you decide on the goals that you want to achieve from a retention standpoint, because it's much tougher and it's a longer game than doing new sales. And the last insight that I have, and after this I'll open it up for questions, Q&A session, is that we structure our teams a lot on the skills they have. You have marketing team that is specialized in a particular skill. You have product that specializes in a particular skill. You have customer success people who specialize in a particular skill. You have services that specialize in a particular skill. What we need to do is that these teams sometimes work too much in isolation, and someone needs to kind of proactively kind of bring them together, and there's no incentive for that person or that team to kind of bring them together. Instead, if you're structuring your teams, look at creating teams either in an agile manner or as a team structure overall in your org, by having teams work on particular stages of the life cycle. So you have teams that are dedicated towards improving the experience of the customers that you have, and once customer becomes the focus, then you have different teams within product, within marketing, within sales. By sales I mean existing business, and customer success, that are working towards improving the life of the customer. Similarly, you can have something for prospects, and you can have something for people who are not yet part of your funnel. Most of the outbound campaigns that we run, or the suspects that we have out there, doing something for them, and having teams kind of create campaigns or products for them. So by understanding where the customer is, or where your potential customer is in the life cycle, you should have dedicated teams working for them, and solving their problems at that point of time. And the last thing, the value delivery in each of these stages, the time it takes for the value delivery itself should be optimized. So what we are looking to do is that we started off with a baseline of the activation rate that we wanted in the first 45 days. Now we want to improve that by 10% every quarter, and that means being better at the jobs that we are doing, understanding the customer better, and reacting in a more agile manner across the board, across the teams that we have. So yes, so those are the insights that we have, and that's the journey we took to tackle revenue churn and to improve retention at VW. Would love to answer the questions that you have.
Hey Ashwin, that was really an insightful presentation. Uh, so I was so then here is my takeaway, right? Segmentation is the key, right? So segmentation is the key. You need to really look at your customer database, not just from the standpoint of the demographics, but also from the standpoint of their engagement with your product, their engagement with uh, the different features in your product, and also understand to what degree of like what degree of engagement do they have, and then based on that, the amazing the graph that you shared, it all makes sense. And also again, to use this segmentation to personalize your approach in terms of reaching out to these audiences is something that will give you the best responses, and of course the wins will follow, right?
Yes. So understanding your customers as closely as possible is the key. So there are different segments of the customers that are behaving differently. So you can start off by segmenting based on behavior, but then on top of that, if you start using the customer information to segment it further, you'll get a lot more insights and a lot more patterns that you can kind of connect. And once you're able to do so, you can create a single action plan that works. One action plan works for many, and that helps you scale your program, and not just handle things from one customer to another. So as you rightly pointed out, segmentation plays a very important role, especially from a scaling perspective, and doing the and solving retention at scale while you're working internally.
Agree. Totally makes sense. Uh, so without wasting further time, I'll just quickly dive into the questions that I have. Harshita Sahu has actually two questions, and I'll take them one by one. Her first question is regarding the engagement metrics. So she wants to know what were the baseline engagement metrics that you used.
So we did not figure. So what we did was we used a bell curve. So we had. So we took the customers that we had and we put a bell curve on top, and we saw that who are the top 10% performers, and what is the engagement metric. What are the engagement numbers for them, and then the next 25 and 25 and 25, and we had that sort of a breakdown of the entire curve. And based on that, then we then we had a baseline based on the accounts that showed average usage across the board, and we use that as a baseline, and then kind of worked from there. So it was dynamic at first, and then we were able to have the baselines, and we wanted to make it static later on. But that needs to kind of improve from one quarter, or like at least a time frame to another, because as use cases involve, people may start using your platform a lot more. So we need to look at that dynamic data again and recalibrate in the next 6 months.
Right. Second question is she wants to know if you can share any examples of how product can play a role in auto renewal of subscriptions.
So optimizing the cancellation page becomes very important. So like when someone goes on the cancellation page and they're canceling, and let's say give them 5 reasons on why they're canceling. If they select one, let's say they say I do not have the right kind of resources to actually get this job done. So at that point of time, if you're able to show them the right kind of offer, and when I say offer, I'm not meaning a discount on the plan that they have, or instead saying that if we'll be able to add 5 hours of services at a discounted rate for your on your plan, and we guarantee three winners out of it, for example. That would be something that could work for your audience. So in our case, we looked at the cancellation page. We figured out the reasons that people were canceling subscription for, and then we ran specific campaigns on them. We did not run, we ran a couple of them through product, and we ran few of them through support, where they reached out to the customers and really customized the offer to them. But we want to scale it within product as well.
Right. And to add to that, I remember an example from LinkedIn itself, right? So they do it really well. I remember when I was canceling my LinkedIn Premium subscription, on the cancellation page, they asked me to select one of the several reasons as to why I was going to cancel. And since at that time my usage wasn't that heavy, uh, and also, so yeah, usage wasn't heavy, and also it was sort of taking away my money every month without any usage. So I chose that option that it is getting costly for me. And immediately on the next screen, they offered me a discount of 50% in the membership, which I did take because, yeah, why not? It's a great deal. So that's one example that I think must be, if it has worked for me, I can totally believe it must be working for others as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one example of how.
So these are resurrection strategies that people have when someone is about to leave, resurrecting those customers. So you can have a long list of experiments that you can run from a resurrection standpoint, and cancellation page, or even the payments page that you have with your payment provider. Those two spaces are great to run these experiments and really optimize to get back as many accounts as possible. But we have seen in the long run, it works, but it's not something that you can rely on, from a long term standpoint. If people are reaching at that stage, you need to figure out ways to kind of bring them back much before than the point that they're looking to leave you, and really get that right.
Right, because I would imagine that would be a heavy loss of revenue on the part of LinkedIn, offering discounts to just everyone.
Exactly.
Right. So our third question is from Gurpriya Kaur. She has written a pretty lengthy question along with the context. So I'll just read it out. Uh, she mentions that she has been in situations where she can sense the threat of an account getting churned. So despite having been in touch with multiple POCs and stakeholders, sometimes client taking the ownership becomes a challenge, since there is no one ready to work on solving the problems. How do we deal with such situations? Your thoughts? So I think she's primarily
So
asking. Sure. If you understood the question.
you can go ahead. You can tell me what you were saying.
So yeah, I was saying that I think she's referring to one of the examples that you had mentioned in your first slide regarding why people lose interest in the product, right? And one example that you gave was the lack of resources and not many uh, people who are ready to take up, the challenges or
So
the problems to solve.
yeah, so I think it's important, like, when you have sold a B2B product to a customer, you know, even 10 days before, let's say, when it's in the legal stage, understanding at that point of time when, the customer is the most excited, you need to have an action plan for them and show them, what success looks like and how to achieve that success. And I think a lot of the customer success managers, or a lot of the, or even the products, because there's a trend of product-led growth out there, is that we do not ask them what does success look like for you. And that's such a simple question, that a lot of teams do not have much idea about on per customer basis. So unless and until you do not know what success looks like for them, you'll never be able to excite them or motivate them to actually solve the problem. No one wants to hear the problem again and again. If I go to Whipple, who's looking to do experimentation, and I say, like, if you're not doing experimentation, you'll lose business, or this will happen, or you'll not be able to do XYZ, that's fine. But what you need to do is, tell people, hey, people, I know that you wanted to increase the conversion rate of your marketing campaigns by 5%. How is that going? And then kind of work from there, because once you have that insight, then you can figure out how we can help you create a better solution and help you get to the next step. So I think it's important on how you structure, uh, you know how you start off with the customer journey, and when you're creating these connects, really understand why they chose your product in the first place. What is the problem that they're looking to solve, and really also deep dive into the problem, and what success looks like at that point of time, and leverage that to show value across the life cycle.
Right, totally agree to that. And to just add a few thoughts there, uh, I'm imagining a situation wherein there's only one person who is handling, let's say, an experimentation program, right? And due to some reason, the person leaves the company. Now, this person was the only guy in the company who actually understood the value of it. And if this person leaves the company, there will be very few stakeholders who would want to take up this project or would do it the same way or with same passion as this previous guy was doing. So immediately the interest starts wearing off. So I think the most important thing here, and Ashwin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is to make the entire organization realize the value of the product that you are selling to them, right? Selling it from the point of view of just features and how it can just automate tasks for you doesn't help. Explain to them the long-term value of using a particular feature or a particular product, and having a buy-in from the entire organization will be very, very valuable, I would imagine, in this case. Because yeah, it's a very valid question. If there's nobody to take care of this particular software or this particular problem, then how do you actually go about selling to them?
So if someone is not taking care of the problem itself, I think, so one way to do it, and this is where it could get very interesting, and that's why you need to work cross-functionally, is that can your product deliver value without someone actually using the product at all? And I know it sounds weird, but we did it with VW Engage. So when we are working on our messenger prototype, what we wanted the users to do was not even write the campaign copy or whatever. We had all the campaign copy ready. We integrated very deeply with Shopify, and all people had to do was turn on their cart abandonment campaigns, and we automatically, because of the integration we had, it would automatically populate the cart with the products that they abandoned, and that it would send those campaigns out automatically from the product itself. So we learned it the hard way, where we expected users to type these campaigns, to set it up, because we thought they need flexibility. Instead, we figured out that people on Shopify, they're not marketers, they are store owners, and they're probably not looking for they're not looking for flexibility. They're looking for ease of use. And then when we made that pivot, it made a huge difference. So what it did was, we just had them using the product for about a minute, and after that, the product gave you automatic value every month, based on the revenue it recovered for them. So this is during my time when I was working, for the innovation lab at Wingify. But that's something that, from a product standpoint, if you're working cross-functionally, you'll be able to have the right teams kind of, also look at this problem and see what can be done. Because if there's no one to solve the problem that you're selling the product for, then who does it? And I think the onus can be on the product itself. And that's also one way of looking at it.
I had one question here. It was
Sure.
regarding, since you talked about going across the board and involving people from the other teams as well. Uh, so I would really like you to share with our audience how difficult was it, or how easy was it, or just share your opinion on how did you manage all the communication among these different teams? How did you align them and streamline all the knowledge that you were getting from different sources?
So I think there are two parts to it. One is having a clear action plan that you have discussed, with the leadership, and that you have, like have the buy-in from the right stakeholders that help you, leverage their backing at the right moments. The second part to it is also informal communications. I think it's important to build relationship with people, without expecting much in return. And I think once these situations, when you're put into these situations, because you have a good communication channel with the right people within the company, it helps you get your point across without people getting defensive, and you're able to kind of champion the changes that you're looking to make. So I think it's from a communication standpoint as well. I think informal relationships and really taking the time to know about people that you're interacting with internally makes a big difference. And I think everyone wants to succeed. Everyone wants to work for the customer and make them successful. So then the rest of the things kind of fall in place. So I think being prepared in
Mhm.
the plan, knowing exactly what you're looking to do, and also being aware of where it could kind of fall apart, and then having the right kind of communication channels and relationships internally, so that you can navigate cross functionally and really get them together on the same page.
Right, agree, totally agree with that. Sam, in the interest of time, I will now close the webinar, right? So thank you so much, Ashwin, for sharing your learnings from the growth experiment that you ran at VWO with our audience today. I'm sure uh, the audience must have grabbed some insight, and they will definitely try to think in this fashion as you did, and help VWO reach or achieve the goal of reducing our churn. So thank you so much for that, Ashwin.
Thank you, guys. I'm also on
If you
LinkedIn. Just
can just
search me up
move.
if you have any more questions. Yeah, I would love to discuss.
Sure, yeah, guys, definitely. You can reach out to Ashwin directly. He's on LinkedIn, uh, and or you can reach out to me. I'll pass on your questions to Ashwin, and he will reply to you personally with the answers to your questions. So feel free to do that, right? And so with that said, Ashwin, if you could just move to the last slide so that I can inform the audience about the upcoming session that we have lined up. So yeah, guys, you might know her already if you are in the marketing and the conversion optimization space for some time. Shanelle Mullin, the conversion optimization manager at Shopify, will be sharing her knowledge and expertise around optimizing SaaS for retention. The date and time is 1st of April, 11 a.m. ET. You can take a screenshot of this slide and visit this URL to register yourself, and definitely come on 1st of April to listen to Chanel, right? And all of the sessions of Masters of Conversion series are available to watch without registration. So you can just visit vwo.com/webcast, and you can watch all the sessions that we've done with all the pastors in the past. So yeah, with that said, have a great day, everyone. Stay safe, wash your hands regularly, and make sure everyone around you is safe as well. Bye-bye.